Welcome, friends, to our new program. Having with us again Mr. John Mackay, International Director, Creation Research Australia. Welcome, Mr. Mackay. We are having a very interesting subject. It's teaching creation in schools. If we have such an idea, if we may get asked to do such, the question is, how would you organize teaching creation in a school? Mr. Mackay?
Well, it can be done because I'm one of those people who went to see a Minister of Education and said, you know, has anybody seen evolution? Do you know how it happened? Have you seen any fossils to show it happened? And all the politicians said, no, no, no. So I said, well, why do we have to teach it as fact? Why can't we teach creation? To which they agreed. So we had to solve the problem as, now that you had permission, how would you actually do it? Okay, think carefully. You're a theology graduate,
yes.
Okay? Go back to Genesis. Think carefully. There are two types of creation mentioned there. Now, the theologians call the first one ex nihilo. Can you tell us what that means in Latin, please?
Out of nothing.
Out of nothing, right. So that when you look at the beginning of the heavens and the earth, there's obviously not even a space there to start with. Now that's sort of, you don't want to think about it for too long, you're liable to leak out of the ears. It's a heavy concept. But there's a second sort of creation which is actually much easier to handle. God takes dust, which is already made, and then he remakes it into Adam. Okay, now that second sort of creation even has a different Hebrew verb. So you have bara for the first one and asar for the second one. Okay, now the second one is actually much easier for us to duplicate. So when people say, there's no way you can deal with creation scientifically, they are talking through their nose. They have never even stopped to think, what would the scientific evidence for creation be? Now I've got a book here called Demise of Darwin.
Yep.
Okay, very good, because it's written in Romanian, but
Yep.
reality that's what it says in English
Yep.
as well. Now, would you believe that the ink in the printer's place just arranged itself to read that? Would you believe that?
Would you think I would be sitting here? I would believe that.
Okay, so obviously you know that somebody you didn't see, somebody you've never met, somebody you don't know, somebody who existed before the book actually used their brains and organized the colors to do something they would not do themselves. Okay, now that's what a creation is. I mean, God who existed before the dust, God who was not a part of the dust, and God who was smarter than the dust could ever hope to be, actually took dust and he remade it into a human being. Now, if you want a scientific formula for it, it's fairly easy. Dust is matter. God did it on the sixth day, so a fraction of time is involved. And obviously, since it didn't happen by itself, he's supplying both information and the energy which makes it possible. So, a chemical formula for creation is very simple. Matter plus time plus energy plus organizing information from outside will produce what you and I call a creation. Can you think of any difference that formula would have from a formula for evolution? Because you can express evolution in the same terms.
Okay. Eternal matter, I guess.
Yeah, good. Instead of an eternal God. Yeah.
Eternal time.
Yeah, 4.6 billion years at least.
Okay. No interference of anything intelligent or
So
anybody.
no information.
No.
Coming from outside the system.
Okay.
Yeah.
Senseless. Goalless.
Okay, so you've got matter, you've got time,
Yes.
and no information.
Well, we may call it chance.
Yeah, okay, so you've got no supervising force, but you
Exactly.
do have energy.
Yeah.
So if you just compare the two, even at a scientific level, the second sort of creation in the Bible and the theory of evolution are easy to compare. Here's the formula for evolution. Matter plus time plus energy gives life. And here's the formula for creation. Matter plus time plus energy plus information from outside the system actually produces life. Now, would you like to win a Nobel Prize? Because you desperately need the money, don't you?
Oh, yes.
Right. Well, if you want to win a Nobel Prize, don't try and be the first to evolve life in a test tube. Because really the theory of evolution says, given long enough, matter will self-organise, because it must have. We're here, right? But the Bible says, no, if you want to make life, then you need to supply the information, because matter, no matter how long it's left, will not self-organise. So matter plus time plus energy, you, the genius of a scientist known as Professor Dr. Romulus Kampart, right?
Could you say that again, please?
Has just made life, and it crawls up to the top of the test tube and says, "G'day!" Right? It's obviously Australian.
Daddy!
Yeah. And now, what you'll find is that the Nobel Prize Committee would immediately flock to you and award you your 100 million in prizes, plus this lovely big certificate, Nobel Prize award, etc. And they will do so because they're acknowledging how much intelligence you put into it. So despite the fact that people say creation isn't scientific, it's actually the only scientific process that exists.
Actually, I thought of being very easy to at least get on to produce that by, take a bag, put in it some sand, and given that I shake that bag long enough, I might get a watch at the end, a digital watch. It's
that's simpler than a single cell. So the evolutionist basically says that, dirt given long enough has turned into living things. And the Bible says, no, dirt, no matter how long you give it, will not turn into living things. You need to supply the information. So you're quite right. That is the theory of evolution. Sand left to itself must be able in somehow to organise given the right circumstances.
Given that I might shake it enough.
Whatever. Yeah.
Folks, if you would be willing to get involved in that, that's still a big prize awaiting for you. Don't get involved in such. What about opposition? Getting into a school. We talked in previous programs, and we strongly encourage you folks to get the previous program of this truly interesting series. We talked about the fact that there are Christian school principles opposing the teaching of literalistic creationism in their schools. We may get into such in secular schools as well. Should we just, at the first no, just leave?
You will find there is a lot of opposition. I've had parents, I've had headmasters, I've had professional scientists say, you can't do this. But instead of backing down, say, why not? And then they'll say, but what about evolution? And you'll say, what about it? Right? Because in reality, most people may have a belief in evolution, but they don't know, anything much about it, including the professional scientists. Who, one of the products of modern education is the concept of specialisation. You start out here in elementary school, you do a bit of math, a bit of history, and a bit of everything, right? By the time you got to high school, you're down to 4 or 5 subjects. By the time you got to the end of university, you're down to a degree in a particular area. And when you do your PhD, you learn an awful lot about an awful little, right? And so, therefore, you have to assume the rest. So even the professional scientist is not usually in a position to really know much about evolution. So go on the offensive, not on the defensive, and force them to justify their position, but do it nicely.